Hello everybody, Holylocked here, and today I'm going to be talking about the Necrolords Covenant. The Necrolords is another one of the covenants we will be getting in Shadowlands. Like I did in my last video when I talked about the Kyrians, I will be talking about the ability you get, the Soulbinds, the Conduits, and some of the talent builds you can run with this covenant, because some of the covenants you do want to run some different talent builds, not just the straight cookie cutter build I talked about in my previous talent video. Alright, and I'll be talking about which Soulbind you should go for first versus when you're at max renown or towards max renown. And I'll also be talking about if the potency conduit specific for the Necrolords is worth it. Alright, and with that being said, let's get to the video. Alright, so here we are. I'm in the Seat of the Primus, the Covenant Sanctum for the Necrolords. Alright, and so first off, I'll be covering the abilities that you get. Alright, so like I said, with each covenant, you'll be getting two abilities, one general ability and one class-specific ability. Alright, for the Necrolords, your general ability is going to be Fleshcraft. Alright, Fleshcraft is a 4-second cast that gives you an absorb shield for 20% of your max health for 2 minutes, and if you channel it near like a corpse, you can basically essentially steal some of the health from that corpse to amp your own up. Alright, and it also works with some of the Soulbinds, but I'll get into that later. Alright, and the ability of Vanquisher's Hammer. Alright, so Vanquisher's Hammer, it's an interesting one in the case that it costs a holy power versus a Kyrian where it generates a holy power, or like the other two covenants doesn't cost a holy power. But this one does. It's only one holy power. It's a ranged ability, 30 yards, and a 30-second cooldown. It hits for, I know you can see here, it says around 1900. That's because I currently have the Conduit in it, which buffs its damage, which I will talk about in a little bit. But without that, it hits for around the same as a Judgment, around 900, 800, 850 damage. Okay, and what it does is it makes your next Templar's Verdict automatically use Divine Storm. Okay, so let me give you a quick example right here. Okay. So I'm going to use the ability, and as you can see, when I use Templar's Verdict, a Divine Storm is going to go off. Right there. It happens that fast. Yeah. And in case you're wondering, no, the Divine Storm does not benefit from your Judgment debuff. If you see in my combat log, it does the Templar's Verdict first, and then the Divine Storm afterwards. I've tested it a few times to see maybe if it was a bug or something. It's not. Yeah, it does not benefit from... The Divine Storm does not benefit from the Judgment, which, I mean, makes sense because technically the Templar's Verdict does go off first, and the wording says it triggers the Divine Storm, which implies that it comes after anyway. Alright, and so the ability, how do I feel about it? Okay, so when I first saw this ability, it hit pretty low, like it being a Judgment costing a Holy Power. It didn't seem too worth it, even with the free Divine Storm. It still didn't seem too worth it to me. But then I went into the, you get your Soulbind and everything, and you can start getting your Conduits. And what it does, and this is a perfect moment to lead into Conduits. So leading into Conduits, alright. Alright, so here we have the Covenant-specific potency Conduit, which is Righteous Might for the Ret Paladin. Alright, so what it is Vanquisher's Hammer deals 100% increased damage, and the damage will now heal you. Alright, so with this, it actually makes the ability pretty good. A one Holy Cloth Spender that does basically the same damage as Templar's Verdict, a little bit less, but it does around the same amount of damage, and it gives you the free Divine Storm. Alright, overall, how I feel about this Conduit compared to the others, it's a good Conduit. The downside about it is that you pretty much have to take this Conduit for the ability to be worth it. Because what Vanquisher's Hammer does, because it does cost a holy power, essentially your rotation becomes to a point where instead of needing a 5 full holy power bar to get your start off right away with Seraphim Execution Sentence, with the Vanquisher's Hammer you essentially need that 6 holy power. Now I've looked into ways of trying to get around that, maybe running Divine Purpose for free holy power spender, running the Legendary Magistrate's Judgment, which decreases the cost of the next Holy Power Spender by 1 if it procs. The downside is neither one of those actually work the Vanquisher's Hammer. It's never going to cost 0 holy power. It's never going to be free. It doesn't use the Divine Purpose proc. It does not use the Judgment Reduced Holy Power proc. So that's already out of there. Yeah, I guess you can use it on the other abilities, so it kind of evens out. But the fact that it just doesn't get affected by holy power decreases or like free spenders, it's a little weird, the interaction there. I feel like that maybe it could have been explained better. Maybe they can fix that. But yeah, that's the downside about this ability, is that you're going to have to pretty much use the Conduit. Otherwise, it doesn't hit for much. And it doesn't feel good to press. And in an ability that's already disrupting your rotation, like from its natural flow, it doesn't feel too good. Alright, because, I mean, Virtuous Command, it does more damage than the Righteous Might Conduit, so you'd still want to run your Virtuous Command Conduit. And the downside about that, so now I'll lead into the Soulbinds here, because I already talked about the other Conduits in my previous video on the Kyrians. Go ahead and watch that. The timestamps are in the description, so you don't have to watch the whole thing if you don't want to. Alright, and so going over all the Soulbinds, alright, so you have Plague Deviser Malareth, something like that. Okay, so the thing with him is, like you'll see with these two, your potency conduits, you don't get the last two towards the end, which it feels pretty bad considering some of the other covenants, they get 2 potency conduits pretty much right away. And if you look into what the passives do, because maybe it can be like circumvented, not so much. I mean, the best passive you have here is your first attack or spell. On the enemy, increase your damage done to them by 10% for 10 seconds. But it's your first attack. So I mean, if you're target swapping a lot, yes, this can be fine. But like I said, if you're not running the Righteous Might Conduit, it almost just doesn't really feel worth it to even use Vanquish's Hammer. And if you're not using this on cooldown to get those free Divine Storms, it doesn't really feel good, because then it's like you're just losing out on those free Divine Storms. Alright. And so the things about him, so his, I guess, special ability is when you use your Fleshcraft near a nearby corpse, you get a benefit from the corpse, and it differs based on the creature's type. But, I mean, if you look at it from a raid perspective, I mean, it's not going to be too useful. With Mythic Plus, I'm sure it can be. So you'll notice a big trend with the Necrolords, the Soulbind abilities, is that a lot of them focus around survivability. Which makes sense to the military might of the Shadowlands, and if you even look at it, this looks like the PvP Covenant, so it only makes sense, you know? I mean, yes, a lot of the other Covenants do have survivabilities tied to, like the ones that are tied to the potency conduits, but I mean, Necrolords even more so. You can tell it was just designed for that. Alright, for example, this one, when reduced below 50% health, you get a shield for 20% of your max health for 10 seconds. Good survivability. Ultimate form. Now this one, like I said, it delves more into being a PvP covenant, because when you channel Fleshcraft, and when you finish it, you're immune to crowd control effects. Okay, and then yeah, you just have your little perks here. Nothing too insane. Movement speed, some damage done, but like I said, you're missing out on the first potency conduit, so it's pretty much, you have to go this way. And right here, you're going to want to put Virtuous Command, because it does more damage than Righteous Might. Alright. So, moving on to Emeni. Okay. So, this one, like I said, with the other ones, your potency conduit, this one, yeah, you do get it a little sooner than you would for Plague Deviser Malareth. But it's still towards the middle. It can be good. You may be able to squeeze this out in time if you really want to go Necrolords. But, actually, I'll get more into the potency conduit placements a little bit later on. Alright, so for his abilities, okay. So the first two, it's interesting because you actually don't have to pick between a potency conduit and like a finesse and endurance. You choose between an endurance and a finesse. So you can actually just pick whichever one makes you feel better. Alright, so Vanquish's Hammer increases your max health by 5% for 30 seconds. That's okay. I don't see this being incredibly useful. Maybe if you're really just having trouble surviving, it can give you like a mini rallying cry. This one, Fleshcraft can be used while moving. Yeah, it always feels good to have abilities you can channel while moving. The thing with Fleshcraft is, I mean, you probably won't really have to move. If anything, you're going to use it when you have downtime anyway, if you're using it in a raid, because, I mean, unless maybe a big damage part's coming up, or you want to stay in there, do some extra damage and everything, then yeah, you might precast it. But otherwise, you'll probably just be using it if there's ever like an intermission phase, if anything. Alright, so for these, you can really just go between either one of them. Personally, I would go for the Finesse Conduit because I don't have it here. But you can get the Conduit that increases your movement speed when you use Blessing of Freedom on yourself, or the one that increases the duration of your charger by 1.5 seconds to move around more, which will just feel nice. Alright, then you get Potency Conduit. Alright, and so this one's interesting. So you essentially get a second Hearthstone. Alright, so what it is, does what the Hearthstone does, except it's a 24-hour cooldown, and it's reduced by 5 minutes for every killing blow. If you think about this, do a few world quests. The way they work now, they're a little bit longer. You're doing a lot more killing for some of them. It'll get reduced pretty quickly. I mean, unless you're just using this and not doing any world content, not doing Mythic Plus or anything, it won't get reduced too much. But then again, this is just for, like, I guess, what you want. All right. So you get your second Potency Conduit. So the thing I like about this tree though is that it doesn't really infringe on you taking a natural Potency Conduit path. This is the only time where things are going to differ. But even with that, I mean, these aren't too good anyway. So it does make the choice hard to go Potency. This one, alright, when reduced below 20% health, you fear nearby enemies. Alright, like I said, and I may sound like a broken record here if I keep saying PvP, PvP, PvP. But yes, this Conduit definitely seems more geared towards that, which is fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, with them wanting to support PvP. Alright, and this one increases haste by 1% for 20 seconds after defeating an enemy, up to 5%. This will be good in Mythic Plus. Will it be completely worth it, though, just having that 5% haste? Over a Potency Conduit, not so much. Not really. This one, yeah, increases movement speed for each nearby enemy. I mean, it's okay, but if you're near a nearby enemy, you're probably not like chasing them around too much. You're not too worried about that. Alright, and his final ability. After using 60 spells or abilities, your next Fleshcraft will deal 2200 damage up to 5 nearby enemies over the duration, and up to 5 healing on nearby allies. I'm not too sure if this one splits in between. I assume it doesn't. I assume that it'll affect both. It's a pretty good ability. If you look at it, it's really a 2-minute cooldown. Alright, because I mean you'll be using 60 spells and abilities within those 2 minutes. So yeah, it's essentially a 2-minute cooldown. It's a pretty good 2-minute cooldown. It does around 11k damage to everyone around you over 4 seconds. So DPS wise, that's around almost 3k DPS a second. If you're using it on 5 enemies, if it's just one enemy, I wouldn't use this. It's definitely an AOE ability, so you'd probably want to wait till you at least have probably 3 enemies around you. Maybe 2. That'll all just depend on the situation, like on what's on cooldown, what's available. All right, and so moving on to Bonesmith Heirmir. Okay, he is your 3rd Soulbind, and the thing with all 3rd Soulbinds is you get them after completing your Covenant campaign. Okay, so starting off, you're gonna want to go with the Potency Conduit, of course, first. This one's okay. It's like a mini Thorns, nothing too insane. This one, defeating an enemy reduces Fleshcraft's cooldown by 1 second. Not too useful, honestly, because, I mean, Fleshcraft doesn't have a multitude of uses, honestly. To where you're gonna be needing it, that so often. And also you have to defeat an enemy, so world content, yeah, I'm sure it's fine. Battlegrounds, it'll be good. Mythic Plus, it'll be okay, if you're really gonna need it. And, I mean, I guess I should point out, a lot of new Mythic Plus affixes are kind of, melee unfriendly. So, I mean, it can be a good thing to use. Okay. So the good thing about Bonesmith is that you do get 2 early Potency Conduits. The downside about Bonesmith is that you don't get him till you complete your Covenant campaign, and by that time, you're already going to be further down your tree, probably to around, I'd say this part right here. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows down, maybe even 6. And so it's a little irrelevant. But the thing about him, if you see here, the path I took, I've been doing some testing on this. I like it. So what it is, this ability for you right here, after landing 10 critical strikes, you gain 20% crit for 20 seconds. That's really good. 20% crit for 20 seconds is really nice. So, because the thing about that, I mean, because this one, you do get your Virtuous Command, and you will put your Righteous Smite there. You're missing out on your third potency Conduit, so, I mean, sorry, Expurgation. So, sorry, Expurgation, sorry, Templar's Verdict. I mean, this 20% crit, it seems too good to pass up. It really does. Okay. And then, but with that, though, you may want to swap out one of these for Expurgation, because, the 20% crit chance on that will make this better. Like I said, it feels bad that it feels like you can't take out the Righteous Might Conduit, but because you really want to use some of these other ones, because this arsenal goes really good with Expurgation, but Virtuous Command just does so much damage that you don't want to take it out. It's not worth it to take out. It's really not. So you may actually take out Righteous Might here, which kind of devalues your Covenant ability a pretty good amount. Okay, and right here, just some more little perks. This one increases mounted movement speed. If you're attacked, you get more movement speed. All right, so this final ability, pretty interesting. So upon death, your armor continues to fight, allowing you to fight for another 10 seconds. So after you die, you fight for 10 more seconds, similar to how the priest can heal afterwards. All right, but during this time, your damage and healing are reduced by 50%, and you cannot receive healing, obviously, because you're dead. Alright, so that's all of the Soulbinds. Alright, so a few things I want to bring up. Okay, so I will talk about first the Righteous Might Conduit. I kind of touched on it earlier. Is it worth taking? Do you really want it? It is worth taking, because otherwise your ability doesn't do too much damage. And that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Alright, so now to talk about which Soulbinds to go first versus at max renown or towards the max renown. Alright, so you obviously start off with Merileth, and once you do the first part of your campaign, you get Emeni. The first part of the campaign never takes that long, so you pretty much unlock Emeni right away. Alright, so the plus side about both of these, you can get the extra survivability from the solvent. Benefit from Emeni, you get the extra Hearthstone, and you get your second potency Conduit before you unlock the second one on Plague Divisor. Okay, so those are the ones. So Emeni it would be the one that I'd recommend using first. You get the 5% health increase, or you can channel Fleshcraft while moving. Just overall feels better to use than Plague Divisor. So what do you want to go for at max? Honestly, it's a toss-up between Emeni and Bonesmith. Okay. So if you want to go more of the crit build and everything, run Bonesmith, because after landing 10 crits, you do get 20% increased chance for 20 seconds on a minute cooldown. Alright, but you will only get 2 potency Conduits if you do go that path. If you do want 3 potency Conduits, yes, by all means, go Bonesmith. The downside about that is his Forge Bone Reveries, which is the upon death you get attacked for a little bit longer. It only occurs when you die. Versus every 2 minutes like Emeni's, which if it's an AoE fight, this ability becomes better. So if it's an AoE fight, yes, Emeni is going to be better. He has a natural flow just for 3 of the potency Conduits, because there's not much contest here. Bonesmith, this one, it's pretty much just good really for single target. No really AoE benefits here. So I have to recommend Emeni for most situations, and Bonesmith if you want to go more of a crit build. Alright, so that about rounds off the Soulbinds. So a few more things I want to mention. Okay, so I talked about earlier, I'll mention a talent build to go with this Covenant. Alright, so a talent build with this Covenant, running Seraphim feels pretty bad with this. Because if you run Execution Sentence and Seraphim, the 3 holy powers from here, it's 6 holy power plus your Vanquish's Hammer, 7 holy power. It doesn't feel too good, because at the start, you can gain, 1, 3, 5, you gain 5 holy power. You can even make it up to 6 with Arcane Torrent. What I found feeling good with this is using Holy Avenger to obviously circumvent, the holy power cost, because each one will give you 3 holy power, except for Blade of Justice, which will give you a full holy power bar. Alright, so using Seraphim, it feels pretty bad. I tried switching around to Righteous Verdict or Zeal and just going Seraphim instead. It works. I just feel like Holy Avenger works a little bit better. Final Reckoning stays the same. The 50% increase, it does work with your Vanquisher's Hammer. And also, Vanquisher's Hammer, if you take the Potency Conduit, does really good damage with Execution Sentence, so it makes sense to run Execution Sentence and take up Seraphim. I feel kind of bad giving up Seraphim because it is a pretty hefty damage increase, but it doesn't really work otherwise. You can run Divine Purpose to, I guess, alleviate some of the Holy Power stress. But it being so random and not affecting the hammer, it's not going to matter too much. I'd say Holy Avenger. The 3-minute cooldown does feel pretty bad, so I understand if you don't want to do that, go for Divine Purpose instead. Alright. Okay, so overall, how do I feel about the Necrolords Covenant? At first, it did seem really good. With the Potency Conduit and everything, it seemed like it was going to be the pick, because it's like, hey, every 30 seconds a free Divine Storm, why wouldn't you? But playing around more with all the Covenants, I could say this one's definitely towards the bottom. It's actually, I'd say bottom 2. I'm not going to say what the other one is yet, no spoilers, for one of my next videos, because the next 2 I will be covering Ardenweald and Revendreth, so I'm not going to spoil that for y'all just yet. But I'd say it's definitely one of the bottom ones. Mainly because how it does feel with your rotation and everything. It feels so clunky. You're putting more work in for roughly the same amount of value, if not a little bit less than some of the other Covenants. Like, for example, Kyrian, since I covered that one, I'll talk about it. I've done a lot of damage testing with this AoE, single target. AoE, Kyrian just demolishes this Covenant. Single target, 2 target, it's a little closer, but Kyrian still did come out on top. Just because, it's really awkward because it's hard to get your optimal rotation with Final Reckoning and Execution Sentence with Vanquisher's Hammer sticking out, because that's just another cooldown you're going to have to manage for timing, and also it can depend on the procs you get, like for Blade of Justice or something. But it feels kind of awkward and clunky to use. It feels bad that it doesn't work with the Judgment Legendary, which decreases the Holy Power Spender by 1, and Divine Purpose talent. I feel like that would really help the Covenant. I don't think it would make the Covenant, but it would definitely be an improvement in my opinion. I'm sorry if I'm coming across negative for this Covenant. Don't get me wrong. When I say it's like one of the bottom 2 Covenants, all of the Ret Paladin Covenants are all pretty close. The damage between the best one and the last one is not astronomical. You can still perform fine. If you want to be a Holy Paladin in the Shadow Death Covenant, you go for it. Alright? Because, hey, Maldraxxus, it's pretty cool. Have you seen their armor sets? That's pretty cool. Alright? To be running around in as anybody. Okay? So, I don't want to try to discourage you from running the Necrolord Covenant, because I did sound kind of negative about it. I do apologize about that. But yeah, it's just really how I feel about it. For me, it doesn't feel too good. There are ways you can make it feel better, just not with the rotation I want to run. If you want this Covenant just to feel fine and really good, just go ahead and run Zeal. You can run Seraphim then, why not? Because not having the Execution Sentence, it's just one less thing to manage. So, here's what I'd recommend if you still want to run Necrolord Covenant and not worry too much about your rotation and all the damage you're doing. This is a perfectly fine one to run. Righteous Verdict, I'm still not too hot about this one right now, just because haste is so low. It's going to be hard to actually get them off. Okay, so that about sums up what I feel about the Necrolords Covenant. Sorry if I came across more negative in this video about it. It's because it's just the truth of how I feel about it. I don't want to sugarcoat it and say, oh, hey, it's amazing, it's really good. It's fine. Okay, I do think it needs some tweaks here and there, but hey, a lot of things do, right? It's still beta. I don't think things are going to change too much between now and live for this and everything. Things may change afterwards, so we'll have to keep an eye out for that. But for right now, hey, if you want to go Necrolords, go Necrolords. Don't worry too much about it. Don't worry too much about it. Your damage will be fine. You're not going to be bottom performing or anything. It's not going to be like you're going to be going against like a Kyrian Paladin in single target versus you in single target, and he's just going to be blowing you out of the water. That's not what's going to happen, okay? it's a change in how the spec just flows and everything because it costs a holy power. The Kyrian one did flow a little bit better for me because it is a holy power generator, and it being a minute cooldown, it's just something you have to manage a little bit less, and it can just flows nicer. All right, thank you if you made it this far. This one ran a little bit longer than I planned because I did expect this one to be a good amount shorter than in my previous video because I didn't talk about the other conduits. But I do have a habit of kind of rambling on and on. So sorry about that. But hey, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment. I do read all the comments. I'll try to answer all of them as best I can if you do leave one. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, so the next covenant I will be talking about are the Night Fae over in Ardenweald. Alright, take it easy.